The Carlton Football Club is facing a myriad of problems on and off the field, that we know. But tonight, exclusive details about an emerging scandal for the club. Plus, the succession plan at Port Adelaide and why we're already talking about it. And Damien Barrett with exclusive details of an insurance payout gone wrong for a star player. Footy Classified starts now. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Footy Classified, that Carlton story momentarily. But first, let's get to our studded panel, and it starts with one of the greatest journalists in the country, the two-time Alf Brown winner, Damien Barrett. Damo, great to have you. The Norm Smith medalist, the Brownlow medalist, and the three-time premiership winner, Jimmy Bartell. Jim, great to have you.
Good evening, Sam.
And the man who was the leading goal kicker for the Essendon Football Club on 12 occasions, the Bombers legend, Matthew Lord.
Thanks, Sam.
Lordo, great to have you tonight.
And Sam, we will start with Carlton. It was a horror start to the actual football season for them, but you're going to reveal tonight there are off-field problems as well. Yeah,
they're facing fresh allegations of one of their sponsors, former long-time sponsors and still one of their commercial partners, MC Labour, being involved now, if you've been reading Nick McKenzie's stories about the big build in the last few months, corruption allegations, and they are also linked to underworld figures and criminal activity, one of those being the ex-bikie enforcer, Toby Mitchell. Now, this is an evolving situation. I've spoken to the club today. This is a company that sponsored the AFLW team. They were their co-major sponsor, and that they still hire to use for security and also for transport and traffic management at the club itself to this very day. And as you saw from that statement there, the Carlton Football Club is not backing away from this relationship with MC Labour. I find this an extraordinary story. You can see there, the club does not act on allegations but is aware and monitoring the current situation. Now, Damo, given what we know around Sport Integrities Australia and now the police at a lot of different levels looking into affiliations between AFL footballers and underworld figures, it is amazing that Carlton tonight are standing by a company that has been involved and is now facing a government investigations at the very highest levels, being talked about by the Allen government as recently as today. Yeah. And they're not severing ties.
And ramping up the task force that was already installed on the back of Nick McKenzie's reporting on this and other matters in recent months prior to his report last night on 60 Minutes.
Yeah, for me, this is Carlton took too long dealing with the Luke Sayers situation. I think they're taking too long dealing with this. So
you're saying they just should sever ties right now?
Well, imagine, Damo, if this was the AFL. If this was the AFL that had a long-standing affiliation for a company that we now know is facing allegations of corruption with taxpayer money, the AFL would have severed all type of relationships. They couldn't be linked to this.
When did the allegations come about?
It was March 7 that Nick McKenzie's first story came out, and then MC Labour were involved in the allegations.
So it hasn't been long then?
What's been more?
March 7.
But, Lordo, how long does it take to be linked to underworld activity to sever ties? The Carlton Football Club don't need.
Yeah, well, I'm hearing it for the first time tonight with Sam reporting it. Look, whether there's a holding position on or a holding pattern, but I mean, you're right. I mean, the sensitivities are around this matter, and I saw Jacinda Allen today say that the task force is being ramped up on all these matters. So, I mean, it will be looked at clearly, yeah. And look, Lordo, the on-field part of what we want to take the story now, and look, there was an expectation that they would beat Richmond on the weekend. Before I get you to give us your take on that, did the captain from the best and fairest last year, as far back as that, and also the coach pre-match and post-match, almost expect to win?
When you get the chance to play in front of 90,000 round one, especially when early part in my career, Richmond stitched us up a fair bit, so we're pretty keen to return serve for a couple of years now.
Yeah, I said to Lucas, I said, mate, isn't this amazing? I said, if you win against Richmond, you'll have the same wins as Sam Walsh in these games. So you might be playing your first game, mate, but you'll have the same record as Sam Walsh.
Did the players take him lightly at all, like once they got into that big lead?
Gee, I'd really hope not.
Yeah.
I'd really hope not, because humility has been a significant thing for us.
And then post the loss, there was a planned membership promotion day on SEN radio station, which was basically cancelled at 6 a.m. that particular morning on the back of the disastrous loss to Richmond.
Oh, they're both really good people, Michael Voss and Patrick Cripps. I don't think, when they were 41 points up, I think They probably did think they'd win, but no different to everyone else in the football industry. 41 points up. I think it's deeper than that. It was the way they panicked.
But that was pre-game.
That was pre-game. But
you don't have a problem with that sort of language.
Well, I go in, say, as a junior coach, or I go into AFL games confident that we're going to win games of football. So I think it wasn't an arrogance, in my opinion. It was just a confidence more so. And it was a bad loss, no getting away from that.
And speaking of Voss and Cripps, so there's one thing I don't want to see again for the rest of the year in particular is Patrick Cripps in the ruck. The guy won the Brownlow medal as a midfielder, polling nearly 4,500 votes, where we're considering changing the system because he polled that many votes. When you're that top-heavy in your back line, where you've got Silvani, Wiedering, McGovern and Haynes, take one of those guys out because you're getting beaten at ground level anyway in your back 50. And Jack Silvani is a good second ruck. And people might count saying, well, he hasn't played any footy for quite some time. But he's declared fit and he showed he could run and launch the footy when he played forward. So don't ever play Patrick Cripps as a ruckman because you lost all energy in the last quarter for him around the ball. I know he boxed on because he's brave, but keep him fresh to do his number one job.
Jimmy, once they get Curnow back and things like that, can you see that changing things, or it's deeper than that from a game plan perspective?
Well, he already adds a couple more goals to your side. We know that, whether he's kicking them himself or he's got someone dropping back, which allows others to free up. They're a couple of goal better side with Curnow in it.
Devil's advocate, why extend Michael Voss's contract at the start of last year?
Well, every club does it. I think the old world stability, doesn't it? I think the last thing Carlton has wanted, probably like Essendon and St Kilda, is another coach changing. So that's what I presume. He took them to a prelim final, Sam. So and then another final series. So I think the days at Malthouse and Pagan and all those types of things, I think that's the reason. And
that's Brian Cook's MO. You have a look at all his time in football, whether it's West Coast and Geelong, is stability. And he likes stability in the key pillars. So if it's a chairman or chairperson, it's the coach and it's your head of footy. He doesn't like to make dramatic changes. He commits to the plan. So clearly he sees the plan that's going on and he wants to see it through.
Does stability prioritised over winning?
But when was that, Sam? What season was that?
February. It was February 14, 2024 is when they re-signed him for another year.
And then when was the prelim? 23?
Prelim was 23 and then they limped into the finals last year and got thrashed.
So that's where I was critical of the Bombers because I haven't seen a prelim.
Yep.
But
so you think a prelim necessitates a contract
it certainly
extension?
helps for a club and a coach, yes.
Yeah, I think that the record of players moving from clubs and then getting to Carlton is an interesting one, Lordo and Jimmy, that I'd love to get your take on. So these are, and I just compared it to Hawthorn, who seem to have a great record of turning guys into great role players on your right-hand side. Is that, Jimmy and Lordo, is that a fair list of the guys that have got to Carlton and gotten better? Because there's an argument that Akers had a great year at Freo his last year there. Saad was a pretty good player at Essendon. I think Newman has been an excellent pickup given what he was at Sydney.
It's difficult to be better when you're injured. You have a look at that list. You can line up pretty much most on the list on the left have had considerable time off the field injury. Scrimshaw's played pretty much since he's been there. D'Ambrosio's played. Frosty has. Big Meekie has. Amon hasn't missed any footy. Choli, Ginnivan, Impey, Barrett, they've all played. So it actually impacts your form on the field.
So does that give the coaching staff a little bit of an out when it comes down to whether those guys have improved?
Well,
it comes down to more conditioning, you think?
Well, being available is actually a skill in itself. Having your body right and ready to go can actually help the side. Guys sitting on the sidelines don't give you much help.
Lordo, when it comes to Michael Voss, does he have the right support around him?
I don't question the credentials of the guys he's got with him because they're all good people and I'm not there enough to judge these guys. But what I will say is I would change a staff member or two every year. Just so for the senior coach there, it gives you that IP from another club. So I look at, say, when Damien Hardwick turned things around. You know, you get Carousella in, you get Justin Leppich in. I think when Craig McRae, it was like Brendan Bolton came in, Leppich came in. I think there was one other as well. So I think it's really important to keep freshening up your team.
It stops the groupthink going on because if you ever sit in those meeting rooms for long enough, eventually you all start to think the same and agree on the same thing. So if you bring a fresh voice in, it can actually change the dynamic, different view as you're talking about, Lloydie.
Do they play finals?
I'm not ready to jump on. I had them around the 5th or 6th mark at the start of the year, but that was a damning loss. I didn't like the panic. I didn't like the bombing inside 50. They had 25 more inside 50s. So I'm with you I doubt Michael Voss sometimes and say if plan A doesn't work, what is next? what is he coming up with to adapt? I saw Sam Mitchell with a 1 tall and 5 smalls just keep lowering the eyes, and they lost losing the inside 50s. But Carlton don't seem to adapt in game, which is a question mark.
Can they win the flag?
No.
Well, the side they played on Thursday night certainly left everyone at the MCG rocking. If you weren't a Carlton fan, and even people who just tuned into the game because of the Richmond youngsters. But I want to highlight the senior players as well. I know we'll keep raving about the youngsters and their composure, but you don't play that style of footy or being able to compete if the senior boys don't come along. Now, Curvis's game was magnificent in the ruck. Taranto, Hopper, Ross, he's counted as an old boy now at 24 years of age. Nick Vlosten started the game absolutely magnificently down back. So the importance of senior players when you're bringing young guys through is just absolutely vital, because you protect them and actually you show them the standards and the way to play footy. In reflection, you go to yesterday, Gold Coast versus West Coast, and I've just highlighted Tim Kelly in particular, and especially off the back of his comments over summer.
You know, I'd be lying if I said, like, my love of the game hasn't been, you know, great over the last couple of years. So for me, I'm just, you know, obviously there's a lot of contract talk and this and that, but I'm just, trying to love the game again, you know, and hopefully that comes.
I hope it comes too as well, Tim, because I admire your honesty, but we need you passionate. You're a guy who found it really difficult to get in the AFL system, and we need you that passionate way if you're at West Coast, because having a look at these edits, they're all in the first quarter. Brand new coach Spike that we all talk about. You're fresh, you're ready to go, you're home deck, you're playing Gold Coast Suns who haven't had a great away record, and these efforts just aren't good enough. And I know I'm picking Tim here, but you could go Cripps. Baker wasn't great either. Even some of the other senior players. Pressure rating, you know, the magic hot dog of footy, we don't know what goes into it, but it's a good measure as well. Is actually your intent to get after the contest. And look at this. This is horrible numbers, no matter whether you're round 1, round 23. You know, between the three midfielders, Anderson, Rao and Miller, they had 92 touches and 29 clearances, and they were negative 49 contested possessions in a game of football. The very first quarter it started from the senior guys.
Those numbers there, Jimmy, are every bit as bad as they were under Adam Simpson as coach. And I raised it because it was Andrew McQualter's first game after a full summer. Yeah,
so he should be eyeballing the senior guys and saying, what are you doing? Because you can actually create a really good legacy. And just talking about Richmond before, you hear the Richmond players like Cochin, Martin, all these guys talk about Chris Newman. When it was times were tough for Richmond, they said he set the standard, he drove the standards. When I first came into Geelong, senior guys, this is how you train, this is how you front up every contest. You can actually leave a fantastic legacy as a senior player.
Leadership is clearly in question, and the head of the leadership group in Oscar Allen is debating his own future. At the same time, they're trying to recruit a Chad Warner to the club. At the same time, they're trying to convince Harley Reid to extend his time at the club. Lordo, when you see that, do you see enough leadership, and do you also see a situation where Oscar Allen himself exploring the market, which he's entitled to do? I'm not knocking him for doing it, but at this state of this club at this point in time, is it an issue?
Yeah, it was good to see Oscar Allen grab him because he was carrying on after the game. Harley Reid. I'm not as critical. We're going to show vision here of Harley not having his best day. He was very disappointing. You know, you touch on Tim Kelly, but I give him an out. Like, you know, the expectations are that high on Harley Reid, and there's not many. You know, people want to mention Nick Dacos. For every Nick Dacos, doesn't matter if you're drafted 1 to 10, they struggle. Most guys are still struggling in their first game of their next year. His attitude, yes, does have to improve.
But you're a bit more empathetic.
I'm empathetic to the fact that. You know, say, for example, Dustin Martin's first game of his second year. Luke Hodge was still not a great player and still making a lot of mistakes at that time. So that's where the senior leadership with Damo Rays is critical. He'll become a great player. Like, say, Jamara Ugahaven, he doesn't make it, you can say, well, we gave you everything. We gave you Marcus Bontempelli as your mentor for a period of time. And if you can't make something of that, well, you're never going to make it anywhere. That's my opinion on a guy like Jamara, whereas I'll ask with Harley Reid. I'm sure they're surrounding him with great things, but sometimes it can just click maybe 2 to 3 years later, no matter how good you are.
What did you make of McGovern yesterday?
I just think for someone who's been an All-Australian over many times, does he change his game to tighten up when you're under siege, or does he still want to just play his way? So you look at him standing out in front. Like, I just think you've got to tighten up, and I'm going to show some vision later on in Sledgehammer around a kid who was thrown to the wolves a fair bit, and I thought Jeremy could have helped him a bit more. I thought he could have, fought a bit harder, not trailed in as much. for such a senior player. So I was a bit disappointed in his game as well. And just on Tim Kelly, you motivate yourself in this game. So I've heard him now for a period of time, but I had many periods where I didn't love the game. I didn't love the game for a lot of my career. And I wasn't looking for somebody else to motivate me. You just got to do it yourself. And I think he's had the poor me for a period of time. And I think it's on him now to get himself and his team back up there, because he's the one on the big bucks. So I feel for Harley Reid, because who's he looking to in that midfield? Elliot Yeo's not there.
So you think Tim's sounding selfish?
Yeah, I just think, you're the one that should be directing and helping others, which he didn't do on the weekend.
The Suns were pretty good. We've smashed them week after week in the last couple of years for their poor away form, but they did what they needed to do.
Yeah, their talent is undeniable, and we always talk about their talent. Obviously, up forward, Ben King was commanding 6 goals. Now the guys they've brought in from other clubs are having a real impact, of course. Long kicking 4, you've got the 2 guys across the half-back flank, and I mentioned the midfield, but that was led by Big Witsy, of course. So that's why I think the time is right now for the Suns to play finals, because they don't really want for anything. Dimmer's had a year, to start making different sausage recipes, as he talks about. Now it's time to serve them up something good.
There were a few debacles on the weekend. The St Kilda Footy Club were at the forefront of one of them. Their president has been pretty vocal the last 12 months, I think it's fair to say, and he said something else that's caught your eye in recent days.
Yeah, there is Andrew Bassett. I think it was in the Herald Sun there, and he says he makes no apologies for their aggressive pursuit. In a wide-ranging interview in the Master of the Saints boardroom, Bassett also said the club will continue to embrace the hard work required, but also, in terms of the war chest that they've got. But I think where they're at right now, I think they're further away from getting a player.
So would you advise against going after big players like the Davis Uniacks of the world?
I don't know if now they're the ones that are talking about young and youth. So why would a Finn Callahan ever think about it? Why would a De Koning ever think about going there?
But they have to try though, don't they? I mean, they have to throw their
well, then
be careful. What's the alternative?
Be careful with your language.
Is that language, Lotto, even stretched into the potential now to have one of their own leave them? I say that, Jimmy, Nasai Wanganeen Miller, a player you rate very highly and an immensely talented player. He's in that situation himself where he's out of contract and there's a lot of interest in him from non-Victorian clubs.
Well, his management group, if you've got plenty of cash to throw around, plus a little bit more on top of mine, and you want to take care of those players, because if you're going to attract the likes of LDU or Finn Callahan, for the names being thrown out there, they want to come and play with those guys. So make sure you actually take care of them, get them in a really happy spot. I do like the young group they're putting together, so make sure you keep them together, and that becomes an attraction, because when you go out to market, you go, look at it, there's Owen, there's Windhagen, Wanganeen, Valera, Philippou, just to name a couple, the 2 other kids they had in the draft. Look at this group that you get to steer through, but if you're going to keep throwing big offers elsewhere and not take care of your own, it just still creates this vicious cycle.
Damon, what if I put to you, what would you sell to LDU to go to St Kilda?
It's a hard sell, particularly for LDU, who's had a hard time at North Melbourne Football Club over 8 seasons of non-winning. We'll get to North at some stage of the program tonight in a critical way. So I couldn't imagine him leaving North to go to St Kilda in this current state.
Winning, in due respect, they're winning a lot more games than North Melbourne have.
Yeah, but they're not getting up anywhere near the top reaches of the ladder, which I think he is entitled to do. Either stay with North and see it out, or go somewhere that's more guaranteed.
Yeah, they haven't been able to find their right midfield mix for a long time, the Saints. The team that smashed them on the weekend did, though, Jimmy?
Yeah, I think they copped a lot of criticism last year about their midfield mix being too one-pace through the midfield. And this is what I've been crying out for the last 12 months in particular. I still think there's roles for Crouch and these sort of guys in the midfield, even Laird coming up. But it always has to have Rankin or Saliga, and then you add Dawson as well. It's because the ability to take the game forward. So the Crows are the number 1 side last year, one-on-ones inside forward 50. They're number 2 for intercepts in the back half. The issue was between the arcs and that attacking ability. So Rankin playing through the midfield, and that only holds up if Rochelle and others play well in the forward line, but they look completely more dangerous and dynamic by spinning those creative types to mix with the ball winners.
Who finishes higher, Jimmy, Adelaide or the Suns?
I think the Crows. Well, I think Crows are better equipped to win away.
Yourself?
I didn't put any of them in the 8, and I'm worried about that.
You'd like to put both of them in, or one?
I'd consider the Crows, Crows as well.
Okay, Lotto making an early change to September predictions. Damo, as we go to air tonight, a lot of our viewers would be aware of Angus Brayshaw and his career-ending injury, and the fact that he's seeking compensation for that by way of an insurance payout. You've got some details on that tonight.
Yeah, there's a delay and a complexity in that seeking of the insurance claim, Sam, for the medical enforced retirement after the 2023 season. And the complexity is the fact that it's Zurich Insurer, which is a sponsor of the Melbourne Football Club, which is causing the delay. And it's got its own reasons to do so, and it can go through the process. But ultimately, we've got to this stage where there is a significant stalemate and a standoff with requirements around his case and requirements for him to physically present to various parts of the scope of inquiry into his situation. So it's just a continuation of what is a harrowing time. It can't be said there's any other word that to apply to what he's been through, given that he was playing football in a final series of 2023, never played again after that incident with Braden Maynard, and is now at this stage where he doesn't know what it looks like in that regard.
Okay, harrowing indeed. We'll watch that space and see how it unfolds. Still plenty more coming up on Footy Classified, including power failure at Port as the succession plan comes under intense scrutiny. The Purple Days, Freo in a spin over their Docker shocker. And danger signs for the comp as Sam Mitchell warns the Hawks' best is yet to come. All that and more on Footy Classified.
Our senior coach Ken Hinkley has advised the club that he will step aside from the senior coaching role at season's end, with current assistant coach Josh Carr appointed as his successor in 2026. Ken is as enthusiastic and energised as ever and will be doing everything he can to deliver premiership success to our people in 2025.
Without question, I still have the fire and the burn and the desire to lead this club in 2025. For me, I know exactly what I have to do now. I know exactly what's coming, and there's no surprises. What were the questions you'll ask me this year? Will we actually win a game of footy?
Collingwood with a 91-point demolition of Port Adelaide. Ken Hinkley begins his final season in the worst way imaginable.
Ken Hinkley's heaviest loss in 275 games.
That was as clear a pantsing as I've seen from any team. The whole Port crowd will be up in arms back in Adelaide.
This succession plan will be a talking point all year.
There's the headline in the Herald Sun, start the car.
You can just imagine it ramping up in Adelaide this week as to, does this decision get brought forward?
I think it's a problem with that type of play, and it's every time they lose, already round one we're talking about it.
91 points. I mean, if they have another loss like that, the question has to be asked.
Interesting stuff, isn't it? The succession plan at Port Adelaide, and if it's already going wrong, as you just saw from that package, Ken Hinkley's worst ever loss as a coach. Damo, is it too unfair to be asking questions already?
I think it is, personally, yeah. And I feel that David Koch's body of work in the public space as a leader of that football club and as a leader of sorts in other businesses and professions suggests to me that he's not going to balk at his own decision that he made only a matter of months ago on the back of, albeit, the worst loss of Ken Hinkley's time. I mean, this is an all-of-season decision. My take on it is that until it's mathematically impossible for this club to make the finals, that it will be a state of Ken Hinkley coaching, Josh Carr, his deputy.
Well, speaking of coaching, my issue is one coach, two coach. Surely you know who Dan Houston is as a player, and I was incredibly surprised. The old statement, don't get beaten by what you know. If anyone knows how Dan Houston plays, it should be Port Adelaide, and this is just far too easy. We know if anything is in the front half and he is running past, go and put an arm across him. He's one of the best kicks in the game. If he's not the best, he's definitely in the top five. He's just jogging around, free time, MCG. If you had any nerves, Dan Houston, playing at the G to impress the Collingwood faithful against your old side, well, have this. 20 metres of space, show all your skills, make Collingwood happy. That was pretty average planning.
In terms of the Carr and Hinkley situation, I'm with Damo. It's too early at the moment, but only those internally will know. Once you start talking to, I know you don't let players run things, but if they say, I'm just a bit confused, I'm unsure, there's mixed messaging, if that starts to set in, you can't be too proud, or if you're David Koch, to say, OK, I'm just sticking with this because that's what I said at the start of the year. So it's got to be what's best for the club, and time will tell how that evolves because it doesn't work for everyone.
Do you think the decision has, whether it's right or wrong, fairly or unfairly, put a target on Port Adelaide's back?
Oh, no doubt it has, yeah. No doubt it has. Where Dean Cox has lost 2 games. Imagine it was John Longmire saying Dean will coach till the end of the year. They'd say, oh, well, I don't think this is working, but we don't say anything about Dean Cox. but that's what's happening for Ken Hinkley.
Am I being too simplistic too, Jimmy, to state that Josh Carr can have a significant role in trying to turn this around? I mean, he is a senior assistant coach. He's been anointed as the next coach. It's on him, maybe not as much as Ken, but he is a part of the group that lost by 91 points.
Yeah, the way I see the plan working is he's up in the box, so he's got the controls, and Ken's there to guide him through to make sure he doesn't make any big blunders, or to be that person who says, hey, you're heading down this path, maybe pivot. No, you're doing a lot right, keep doing that. That's how I thought the succession plan would play.
But you
out.
never have the full remote control. You only have a few of the buttons, not all of them. That's what I'd say. And I thought Collingwood's response was really good. Like, they were under siege, like a lot of other teams are this week, and they played with hunger. Their pressure rating was off the charts in this first half in particular, and then they got their legs back. They could not run. Full credit to the Giants. I know it was hot there in Sydney when they lost, but they were running into the ground, not on top of the ground, and an outstanding response from the Magpies.
Never saw you as a gamer.
I'm not a gamer, but I just like to...
I love the metaphor.
He's a man who grew up with brothers, and Simon might have said you can't have that, Matthew.
I wonder how that fight would have worked out. We talked about the many debacles, the Fremantle Football Club clearly being one of those, Jimmy. And, the coach was pretty open after the game about the fact that he didn't prepare the side well enough. What did you see watching them in the Cattery?
Well, they weren't prepared. And obviously the Cats had come out with a game plan, and Fremantle have been telling us that they want to use a lot of handball to break their way through, because they've come under a lot of criticism about being too slow by kicking around their back half. They said it's handball chains, and the Cats certainly had planned for that.
And let's hear from the coach, Justin Longmuir, after the game, who was understandably disappointed.
We weren't tough enough. Like, I thought, their hunt and their pressure was at a level that we couldn't handle, and we couldn't apply the same pressure to them. It was really disappointing, obviously. Yeah, he's going to grow with all aspects of his game. He played, probably played well, I guess, but a bit like the rest of the team. What was his first and second and fourth quarter like?
And here is the vision of them. Damning when you hear a coach say we weren't tough enough. So they did everything to get back in that game. The momentum was with them at three-quarter time. And just to throw it all away and just be blown away. Carlton are a bit of a momentum team where they have such good halves and quarters, and they drift away. Fremantle can be a bit like that too. So they've been around as a group for a fair while now, and he's been there for a fair while. They shouldn't still be having losses like that.
So you guys have talked quite a lot over the years about the importance of on-field leadership, and when panic sets in, it's the leaders on the ground in the moment that can make an impact. This is nearly a year ago to the day Caleb Sarong talked about some of the personality traits of this group.
It's definitely something that we've kind of spoken about, and how we can get guys really involved in meetings and out in the field, and it's been a big theme throughout the pre-season for us. We might have a few introverts throughout the group, and that's fine, and we've kind of made it pretty clear across the board that you can be an introvert Monday to Friday, but once you get out in the field on Saturday, you better be speaking and helping your teammate, because that's a non-negotiable.
I love the openness there from Caleb Sarong, and we just watched now the unfolding of events at the Cattery on the weekend. But I'm not an expert, clearly, in character traits, but you don't just create an extrovert out of an introvert if that's what they've identified as their whole. You've got to recruit those types of people.
Jimmy, can you change from within?
I think you can find confidence in your own form and ability and where you sit in the side, which allows you to push yourself out there. But, I'm with you, Damo. If you're a natural-born extrovert, you're normally the big, loud voice. You need a mix in your team. You can't have all the footy dorks and all the rogues. You've got to have a good mix, and that comes with introverts and extroverts. But Freo aren't the first side, and they won't be the last side to get pounded down at Geelong. I don't think that's, we're going to put lines through them. I think there's a massive room for improvement. But also, I think, Justin can sell a bit more hope. Murphy Reid did something, incredible for a debutant. No other debutant in recent time has kicked 4 goals in a quarter. And you mentioned they had hope at three-quarter time. You can pump that up.
Jimmy, who was the one at Geelong? So Selwood doesn't jump out at me as the... I know, rah, like say, I know when leading teams you did where you challenged Gary Ablett around that time. Like, who was the one at Geelong in that regard?
Yeah, look, Selwood did it in his own way. He was firm and direct. But if we were struggling, and especially when it came to the midfield, Matt Scarlett would come up to the back of the square and he'd lay it straight on you. And you had to lift because he demanded it straight away. There was plenty of guys across the field. You know, Steve Johnson had a big voice on the forward line, Cam Mooney, to name a couple. But everyone did it in their own way.
And Scarlo's a quiet type, Damo. So that's where you don't have to be a loud, extroverted person to challenge behaviours out on the ground.
It was an enthralling contest between the Swans and the Lions on the weekend. It was almost the game that we wanted on grand final day. Alas, it wasn't, but what a fantastic contest. And it just got me thinking, Jimmy, about our man Lordo, who sat here all week ago, Nostradamus, and said, I'm just not sure it's that easy to go forward as a backman and dominate. And sitting there through the game, the change went, halfway through the third quarter, and Dean Cox was asked about the McCartan move after the game.
Yeah, Tommy started really well, and the difference between open space leading and engaging your player, you know, when you're talking about Harris Andrews and the like that match up on him, you know, you've just got to provide a contest, and that's all we ask, and provide outlets for our players when they come out of the back half. And then he goes back as well. So, and that's the luxury of having Tom in the team.
So he wasn't even a natural kicking for goal. So that's the other. He's not a natural with his leading patterns. He's not a natural when he's got the ball to have a shot. So you've got a potential All-Australian centre-half back to be an average forward. So that's what I'd be wrestling with, to say go and get your All-Australian back, and then say I'd be even surrounding. I think the small, medium forwards are dominating the competition. Why not have a crack until McDonald comes in? And Amadi with Hanley, Papley, Hayward.
Push Warner forward.
Warner or a Heaney forward.
So go deliberately.
Go deliberately and get him back to where he's confident.
Nostraloidos, he certainly was last week. But Chris Fagan made some telling comments, and I agree with him, one of the great wins for the Brisbane Lions.
It was one of our great wins today, I reckon, as a group. If you look back over what's happened over the last 2 weeks, we had an interrupted preparation for this game, obviously with the cyclone threat. You know, we lose Charlie before the game. Sam Day's dad passes away. We lose Kai Lohman early in the game. Starcevic towards the end of the third quarter, I think it was. Yeah, that's an awesome win to come here.
Yeah, I agree with him. There was plenty of low-hanging fruit for the Lions and Chris Fagan's team, but they just gritted the teeth. And they dug deep, and against a side that was pretty good, the Sydney Swans, all day. And that's something that they can gain momentum, and that's off the back of winning the premiership. We've heard the stories, you know, when they're on thin ice, you might as well dance. I think they're just grabbing that and believe they can win from any place, anywhere.
Talk about leadership too, Sam. I mean, Chris Fagan himself about 15 months ago made the comment that Josh Dunkley is the most like player to Luke Hodge's coach when it comes to effect and leadership, and we're seeing it. We're seeing it now. We saw it on the weekend.
Gee, that's a big call, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's how you win premierships. Like, you need 7 or 8 core players. So he's vice captain behind Andrews and Neil. So he's third in line, where he'd probably captain 12 other clubs.
Okay, coming up on Footy Classified, the water cooler is next. That's the issue that we think everyone needs to be talking about, plus the Hawks and the Bombers, the Dogs and the Roos, and the sledgehammer with Lordo. That's right, it's back. Welcome back to Footy Classified. Well, Christian Petrarca and the Melbourne Football Club have been the water cooler topic for the best part of 18 months now. And I want to take you back to comments he made on radio in 2022.
It's two
Well,
losses.
we need a crowd first to actually get ourselves going. No one comes. When you come out there and you only see really 30,000 there, it's pretty...
Are they still doing...
I find our age demographic for our fans is still quite older.
So then round one turns up, and look, I know the Grand Prix was on, I know it was inclement weather, but another crowd of low 20s. It does beg the question, Damo, is this, and if these crowds continue, if it's going to continue to kick this can down the road about this story going on in Christian's future, not only with his brand, but also playing football at Melbourne.
Yeah, and you layer that with the decision that Mark McGowan revealed to the public this time last week about him leaving his management group of the entire time of his football career to go to a marketing brand, effectively, to manage him. So you weigh all that up. Look, all you can do, I think, Sam, is take the club at their word at this stage. That the words they've got from Christian since he decided to stay have been nothing but positive. And I do take out some of that, and I also look at what he did in that return to football in that particular game in front of 20,000 people. It was close to Christian being the best he could be in that moment, at least. So I'm not as worried about it as I was maybe in the most recent off-season.
So do you think it'll come down to, say, relationships more so than where the team's at? Because I don't know where the team's going to be. So 6 new players, so I admired them for that. But say they're 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, is relationships more important than that? Or do you think he's looking for a team now that can go on and win another premiership?
No, I think it's a really valid point. And all we can do, I mean, we sat through a breakfast last week, and again, we're not talking out of school, it was off the record, but there was an element of how they have changed their approach and their respect for each other around on the back of these deep conversations, Lord Owen. Look, ultimately, you're referencing of the 6 new players. That was a brave call to make, and they stood up. They were in front of this game with a minute to go, or less than a minute to go. So you could argue that's a massive tick. So, but the relationships, I think, are more important than the crowd when it comes to Christian.
Just a different thought. Why do we automatically assume that going to a big club will increase the brand? So part of his appeal to me is he's a drought-breaking player of the oldest club in the game. He already transcends the football club. So he's already got the fans from every other club who like Christian Petrarca as a footballer, as a chef, as whatever brand ambassadorship he does. So why do we automatically assume, well, that club will just send him to another level? Won't you lose a portion? It's just a thought. I don't think it's as automatic as people think.
It's an interesting question. Could we compare it to maybe the Real Madrid effect in soccer, in that, you know, no matter how good a player becomes at a big team, the Chelseas, the Manchester Uniteds, everyone ends up wanting to play for Real Madrid. So if Christian Petrarca was to go to, say, Collingwood, the biggest club,
which he wanted to, Collingwood was open about that after it became public, that he had approached them.
The biggest club in the land, surely that increases his profile.
Yeah, and look, I'm not disagreeing with you. I just think it's a thought. But the sport that you highlight and many other sports where brands are connected to players and players are brand are a lot more transient than AFL football. And we still hang on to the hope that he plays 300 games for one club, premiership player, and we look fondly upon those players. Like I look fondly upon Matthew Lloyd just playing at Essendon. And I know times are changing and we're seeing free agency and we're a bit more open and accepting. I don't think it's just always automatic, bigger club, Christian gets bigger. It might be, and I might be wrong, but I just think it's a thought.
You sat here last week and said that you thought the Bombers would challenge the Hawks, that they'd get close. Were you right in the end?
No, I don't think so. I don't think I was. I think they had some good moments in the game, but Hawthorn were a class above. And you and I spoke to Zach Merritt pre-game about the standards at the Bombers and where they're looking to be.
I think Brad certainly brought in an attitude that I don't think we were, to be honest, ready for as a playing group. And I refer probably more to off-field, to be honest, and that ability for guys to actually live an elite lifestyle and professional athlete lifestyle that I think has started to be a pretty consistent behaviours and habits throughout the footy club at the moment. No doubt we've got a long way to go building that on-field consistency, but I think we're on the right path.
Yeah, 26 points was the loss, so looked good, okay on paper, but Hawthorn were far better in this game. Ben Mackay, was disappointing, so yeah, you get him to the club to be, you're hoping he's a Stephen May, Jacob Wiedering type of player. Are
you now really worried about him, Lordo, from an Essendon perspective? Yeah. I raise that because this is not the first time you've raised it, and he did fall away in 2024, his first year as a Bomber.
Yeah, he hadn't touched it till half-time, and I think what Hawthorn did really well is they don't bomb the ball, so he had no way of impacting. Then fumbles, that was a bad fumble. So unless the ball is being bombed in and he can mark the footy, I don't think he provides anything like the key defenders do at other teams. And look at this, percentage losses, 1v1 loss over the 2 years. He's at 32%, and look at what the better players can do.
And Sam Mitchell can still see improvement in the Hawks, which is quite scary. And this is what some of the areas he highlighted where they can improve.
You know, we lost a lot of statistics that says we shouldn't win that game. You know, we got a touch-up, a clearance, lost the inside 50 count by 10. We not only lost contested possession by 20, we also lost the tackles by close to that as well. So there's a lot of area that needs attention for us, but we're able to kick 111 points and win the game. So that part makes me happy, but some of the underlying stuff, we've got some work to do.
Yeah, and Essendon were incredibly brave and tough, but the golf in skills was pretty large throughout the night. And just picked out a couple of edits here, and Lloydie, you touched on it just before. It's really simple fundamentals. Each one of these players gets the ball, looks up and kicks it to advantage side. So that's actually making the opposition pay. The only person who can win the ball is the Hawthorn player. Carl Amon, this magnificent kick. Where's the space? Little wizard, go jump in there. He actually leads him to it. This one is the opposite side. So Martin comes in the middle. He's going for Langford, misses by 10 metres. This is on the forwards as well. You've got to actually get on the right side to start with so he can kick it. And you control the game here, 60 metres out. The whole game is waiting for you. You can take as long as you want, you can go as quick as you want, you can direct it to advantage side. That's just kicking the bladder out of the football for no result. So that's where Essendon's got to improve to get greater effort for their hard work. But that was the difference with Hawthorn. They had 7 inside forward 50s in the third quarter and kicked 3 goals 3.
When Sam Mitchell highlights the minus 20 contested possession, the minus 20 tackles or thereabouts, when they kick like that, does it matter what numbers they produce there?
When you run into some good sides of big finals, they'll make you pay on the way out. Essendon didn't make them pay when they had dominance around the ball, but Hawthorn, to their credit, set up really well outside of it and then just didn't give the ball back.
You said before you might want to change your top 8 predictions with the Suns and the Crows. Any change on the Bombers after what you saw on Saturday?
I'd never had them in the 8. I think they'll be anywhere from, 9 to 11.
Okay, so you still think that 12 to 13 win mark is attainable?
I think, but Adelaide Crows at the MCG, I look forward to that this weekend.
It certainly is. Okay, speaking of Lordo, the new segment that's going gangbusters, the Sledgehammer is next, plus all the old favourites. Good call, bad call, the cook, and plenty more on Footy Classified.
I've never been so excited about a kicking as I was on Friday night. Hawthorn v Essendon, James Sicily. So the genius, Sam Mitchell. So look at all the Hawks players go to one side, all the spaces out the other side. So Essendon think that's where it's going. Little block by Frosty out to Jarman Impey, and they've gone to the open side of the field where they hadn't gone the whole night. The Bombers weren't ready for it. Harrison Jones got caught up in it, and it went coast to coast, and McDonald kicked the goal. Nick Watson, don't see this with him a lot, but some of his smothers the other night were brilliant. So we only see the fancy side of him, but then he backed back with the flight of the ball. And what's this follow-up from a small forward? This gets you games. Forget about the goals. This is what all coaches love in players. So Harry Edwards, the young eagle, he was thrown to the wolves. It was a tough job, but that's touch. Don't lose touch. Don't be a marking bag. And that's what he did. Keep touch. Press into Ben King. Keep pressing into him. So this one, Dustin Fletcher was the best at it. Keep one eye on the kicker and one eye on your opponent. You do one of each. Harry Edwards loses sight of King here, and that's when you're in no man's land. You're in a lot of trouble. So if he's watching, one eye on the kicker and one eye on your opponent. Don't do either. Zane Cordy, when you leave, so he's leaving Thilthorpe over here, you must impact. Wasn't clean enough, ball goes through, Thilthorpe's off to the races. This summed up St Kilda early in the game. Look, it was pretty embarrassing. So Cordy must impact. Jordan Dawson, can he be a top 5 player in the game? I think he can be. He's on Jack Steele. Watch the power and the explosiveness. Jack Steele can't go with him. He's kicked that 65 metres and made it and gone through for a goal. And now he's added marking to it. He was a wingman at the Sydney Swans. Look at the power and the contested marking. No Saint player could go with him in that. And if you fall asleep on Zach Bailey, this is what he'll do to you. So here's Bailey. It's a shocking turnover and a drop by Nick Blakey. But watch, he's asleep, doesn't react. Bailey just goes. He's another one I can't wait for. He was good last year, but he can go to another level. And this is the next one. Watch Tommy Papley fall asleep. So Papley, Bailey, and watch once he's still ball watching. Bailey is off and he kicks another goal. He doesn't miss 4 goals from a small forward. This is why the Lions will be back up there again, because players like Zach Bailey are just going to go to another level this year, Sam.
Absolutely A-grade stuff, Lordo. Best version of the Sledgehammer that it has been in its infancy. We'll talk about the Jackson Archer incident briefly. It has got the footy world talking from a match review perspective. You sat on that panel for a long time.
It's good to get off.
I bet it is. What did you make of the incident? What could he have done?
Yeah, I don't know what a lot he could have done. People will argue, well, the AFL put the argument to Jackson Archer and North Melbourne was, you've got a duty of care here, you shouldn't be going in so quick and reckless. But he'd be under the thought process that we've been told to keep our feet. So obviously he's attacking the contest. Unfortunately, Cleary went to the ground and got concussed. So obviously we're not blaming him as well. But I don't think it's Archer's plan for his shin to hit him in the head either. So he's had a lot of speed. He's tried to hit the contest. I'm so fascinated to see what the tribunal does. They'll place all the duty of care on Archer and none on Cleary, because we should be still teaching players, don't put your head where your backside belongs. You should be approaching the contest, turn into it. But sometimes he'd get a free kick. But now he's got 3 weeks. So
you've still got the match review office, the tribunal, and most likely the appeals tribunal as well.
Yeah, I know this is...
Monday, Tuesday night, Thursday night. Yeah.
Keeps us talking about it, Damo.
Well,
that
doesn't
wouldn't have
change,
anything to do with it, though, would it?
But who determines what is and isn't allowed in the game? It's an independent body of lawyers, ultimately.
It certainly is. Okay, good call, bad calls coming up next on Footy Classified. Welcome back. Time for Good Call, Bad Call. Jimmy Bartell has demanded the new ball again. Jimmy, inferred pressure doesn't just impact players. Good call, bad call?
Bad call here, Sam. We see Muscles Kingsley here who told Fly McRae to sit down. And where's Simon Goodwin? He's up in the coach's box. Safe place to be from Adam Kingsley, but he did make his way back down to the bench a little bit later in the game. He backs himself in the gym as well.
Sam, this one's to you. The AFL is putting the cart before the horse on Tassie. Good call, bad call?
Good call, Damo. Astute call. That's why you're a multi-award winner call. There's a breaking story from CalTumiAFL.com about some of the draft concessions for Tasmania. There's no stadium confirmed yet, which means there's no team confirmed yet. We can't have concessions for a team that doesn't yet exist. Good call from you.
Damo, your campaign to get Fox callers back at the ground has had unintended consequences. Good call, bad call.
It's a good call, Lordo. It's a biased call from a Fox team perspective. They just need to get these people to the grounds. And look, we're seeing some allegiances play out. We've got Jack Riewoldt at a Tigers game, Geordie Lewis Hawks game, big Tommy Hawkins at a Cats game, Cam Mooney at a Cats game. So, yeah, look, it's a good call.
Speaking of the Cats game, Lloydie, good call, bad call. You don't know what you've got until it's gone.
Good call, and that is Bailey Smith at full fitness. Best on ground. He and Max Holmes in that midfield to allow Dangerfield to play forward. He couldn't have had a better start, Bailey Smith, at his new club.
Imagine playing a player where he was drafted.
Nice number.
Extraordinary situation. Jimmy, we've never seen anything like Campbell's backflip at the MCG on Thursday night. Good call, bad call?
I'm going to say bad call. We've had a couple of attempts at it call. Seth Campbell here for Carlton fans. If you hadn't left already, take this with you. Oh, bang! That is a perfect backflip, which reminds us of this one back in the day. Peter Wilson in 1988. He just goes to throw it and goes, nah, that'll do. I didn't get quite enough height to get over for the backflip.
Sam, I'm back to you. Weird signs on AFL benches weren't the strangest team messaging in town yesterday. Good call, bad call?
That's another good call from you, Damo. We know that things have gotten strange on the benches at AFL clubs, and everyone thinks they're smarter than the next, so they want to have these little symbols or acronyms. This is what we're going to do, maybe even a Bible reference there. But the weirdest thing on the weekend was at the best event in the world, and that's the Australian Grand Prix. Let's see what happened with Ferrari and Charles Leclerc.
Is there a leakage?
A leakage of what?
I have the seat full of water, like full of water.
Must be the water.
Let's add that to the words of wisdom.
Yes, that clears that one up then.
That is why they are so successful, because they deduce that sort of stuff, James.
Damo, the heat is on Bevo like never before in 2025.
Bit of water on Bevo too, wasn't it? That's a good call. It's a hot beverage call because he was really sweating it up in the box on the weekend. It was a hot night here in Melbourne on this particular night, and for someone who sweats on this desk, Lordo, I can relate to what he's going through there, but he's nice and worked up.
Jeez, you've gone harsh on Bevo again, Damo.
No, Lloydie,
harsh on
question.
Bevo again.
Lloydie, football's happiest man, a man we all love, the smiling assassin himself, Brad Johnson, could be the unluckiest man, or luckiest.
Oh, good call by you. Unlucky. Have your career nearly ended firstly by a buggy, which we'll get to shortly. But they say it's good luck, but happened to me once on the top of the head. And it certainly didn't get much luck after that.
Was it worse luck than this?
But look at that. That was his Achilles was never the same after that. So I love the man, and he was stiff on the weekend, but continuing on like the trooper he is.
Okay, good luck or bad luck. We may never know. The closing cook with Lordo is coming up to finish off Footy Classified.
You all know my favourite cooks are going after one of our own. So sorry, Damo, you're in my sights after yesterday's Sunday Footy Show trying to spit this name out.
This is his first goal of the year, way back in 2006. Simon Prestigiacomo and also Tarkin Lockyer there in that passage of play.
Who was that?
Simon Prestigiacomo. Simon Prestigiacomo. Simon Prestigiacomo.
So you don't make many errors, Damo. So you were in my sights as soon as I heard that. Oh, that's right.
I was hoping that one slipped through, Lordo, but that clearly didn't.
Can I ask a favour and maybe one cook you don't go after one of us?
Oh, no, I can't.
Footy Classified continues tomorrow night with Eddie and the team. Thanks for your company tonight. We'll see you next week.
This has been another presentation from Nine's Wide World of Sports.